Jeff Plavier. While you rightly use Rocky,
Right.
very rightly, you use mills in Scotland and England. Are there mills in Ireland, Canada, or the USA that produce tartan? And if so, what has been your impressions of those mills, if assuming you've seen their product?
Yeah.
Are there any mills outside of the UK that could be in the running for kilt making?
Short answer is yes. Long answer is no. There's back when we first started in 2003, there was a mill in Canada called Fraser and Kirkbride, and we used to get the occasional bits and bobs from them, but they have since gone out of business, and well, I shouldn't say gone out of business. They sold into another company called Ingalls Buchan, and I think they no longer weave in Canada. Mac, did you ever deal with any Fraser Kirkbride cloth or no?
Not that I remember.
Their cloth was either 12 or 14 ounces. It wasn't the normal 13, and it was merino wool.
Oh,
And-
okay.
Yes, and so it was a nice tight weave, but it was kind of like floppy. And the one really, really weird thing that I used to hate about their cloth was the when it was stretched during the finishing process or whatever, one side was longer than the other. So when you cut it down the middle and go to splice the tartan, from the top to the bottom, you'd always end up with 3/4 to an inch.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is that
like
far?
a crazy step. A crazy step. So we never used them much because you'd literally be like pulling at the cloth to try to stretch it back out. It was not fun from them. But so that's one mill that was in Canada. I think they were in BC up in Canada. The other mill that I'm thinking of is it Heritage Weavers?
Family Heirloom Weavers.
Family Heirloom Weavers, yeah.
In Redline, PA.
Yeah. They've, we tried, like we've literally tried years and years and years ago. Are there any mills close to us? Can we do something in the U.S.? And Mac, through his reenacting knowledge, knew of Family Heirloom Weavers, and we contacted them. And basically, we got a piece. They did the piece of was it Blackwatch?
They did a piece of Ferguson.
Okay, I had a sample of Blackwatch.
Yeah, because I saw it in their store.
Yeah.
They had wove did a bolt of it up for a customer of theirs that they only ended up buying a small piece, so they were stuck with the rest of it.
Yeah.
So they ended up burning through it in the store, but when talking with Pat about it, and then that's what I brought it to you to show you that sample.
Yeah, and they sent me a piece of Blackwatch too, because we were talked about potentially doing something with them. And the problem, didn't they just don't do finishing anymore?
The problem is the finishing process is hard to find someone to finish in the U.S.
Yeah.
Is just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, the loom or the mills in the U.S., like weaving a piece of cloth, it's not just one company that touches the thing. You have to have dyers. Well, first you have to have spinners, then you have to have dyers to dye the yarns, and you have to have weavers, then you have to have finishers. So there's at least 4 large steps of the process, and once mills started going under in the U.S., once globalization of the economy, once the products started coming from overseas, it basically just hollowed out the mills in the U.S. And it's the ancillary businesses that support the mill itself kind of all started going away. So in talking to Mike from Family Heirloom Weavers, basically his response was, yeah, we can weave cloth for you. It's not a problem. Getting it finished becomes the problem because he had to mail it to, there used to be a place in Jersey, I think he said, there was a finisher, but they went bust. Canada. And then, at one point he was going to Canada to get things finished, and you had to worry about customs back and forth, and he was trying to find something in North Carolina.
Wow.
Like there was...
And there goes your cost.
Yeah, it's cost. It's not like it's just down the road. It's a UPS ride away and a UPS ride back. So on a big, heavy bolt of cloth, that's going to cost a good chunk of change. And all of that gets added into the cost of the cloth. So when we were actually looking at it, because I went through a good exercise trying to get this done just to see if I could support American businesses, 15 years ago. And it really was not cost effective. I mean, by the time we were all done with it, the minimums were, reasonably high, like a piece or something like that, which we can handle, but it's not ideal. And then you have to worry about the finishing and all the price back and forth. It was cheaper to get it from Scotland than it was to try to have it made in the USA and go from here to here to here to back to there to over to me. And reinvent the wheel the whole time because they're not really used to weaving tartan and things like that. So then it's a matter of, putting them through the training process, for lack of a better term, or exactly how we want things done to emulate how the Scottish mills are doing it and stuff. And it just kind of became this isn't their normal forte. This isn't what they typically are doing. So let's just keep ordering from the different Scottish mills and, not have to worry about it as much. But yeah, so we've looked at having stuff woven in Canada, looked at having stuff woven in the US. The industry isn't there anymore. It's for the most part, it's gone away. There are some companies that'll have like cotton woven or denim or things like that, that are or flannel, things that are much more widely used, flannel shirts like Pendleton Woolen Mills.
Woolen Mills, that's who I was thinking of.
Yeah. So there are companies that are still doing it, but it's very specialized, but broad enough that they can do it in other industries.
But either they don't need to be in certain processes, they don't need to use the certain process for what they're doing, or they've already have an in-house thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's what the rest of Pat's rest of what Family Heirloom Weavers does is.
Was it Pat or Mike? I think I said Pat. Mike. Sorry.
It's the rest of what he does is all stuff doesn't need to be finished. So that's where he's bread and butter is.
Yeah. When did finishing start becoming a thing on cloth?
That I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a thing back in like the 1700s, which is some of the stuff he's weaving is like, colonial era / Civil War era kind of thing. So he was trying to do historically accurate things, which is why he didn't need to necessarily have a finisher. But for us, we needed the cloth to be finished, not in the grease or things like that. Eric, you were going to say something about Pendleton or no?
Nope.
Okay.
Just Pendleton popped into my head as a specialty operation that has a connection to tartan and is U.S. based. I don't know how much of their weaving is done in-house at this point, to be honest. For all I know, they are an international operation now too. But that's the only option I can think of.
Yeah, Pendleton Woolen Mill, for those who don't know, make beautiful, beautiful blankets, and as well now they make like clothing and stuff as well, flannel shirts and whatnot. Yep. But you were saying something about they made like the blankets for American.
Yeah, they
Indians.
they first, and this is tangential, but they cut their teeth, so to speak, by weaving blankets, which were trade blankets, and they were good enough, and they were selling enough of them that they started doing custom designs for different tribes. Yeah. So there are certain styles which are associated with different indigenous nations, and they still sometimes use them for special occasions, like as gifts of honor to diplomats and stuff like that. So they really have an interesting history, very interesting history. Yeah. But I don't know about and we know they've done tartan. We know that they have access to historical tartan data, but they're not somebody you could have weave cloth for a kilt. They don't do that.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and they're more of a vertical business model.
They are a vertical business.
Yeah. Vertical business model for those. Basically, it's they create the thing and then sell direct to the consumer versus go through a bunch of different middlemen kind of thing.
Yep.
So yes, there are some, but it's difficult to find a hen's teeth. So
yeah.
One thing that I hope came through in that video is how precarious some of these industries are, whether it's weaving in the US and how once one domino falls, the rest of them fall, or whether it's supporting companies in Scotland. So vote with your dollars. Support smaller companies who are making products with their own hands, not just mass producing stuff. Thanks, guys.